there, everybody. Welcome to the channel. I'm Cindy Daychuck with Queen Bee Creations, and we are going to do a little craft today inspired by my thrift find for $2.99 plus 30%. So $3, $30, $60, $90, not really, $2 of old thread spools. So no thread on them, just the spools. Perfect. Now, for the spool itself, to start, we are going to, oh, this is the bottom of the barrel here, but just to get rolling, I'm just going to paint the spools. Now, I'm going to be covering the top edge, the bottom edge, we don't care. So I'm just going to paint them. I'm just using, I'm using beadboard by DIY because I have it. It's open and it's right at the bottom of the barrel. So it makes sense to use that up for small projects. But you could use any kind of paint color that you would like and any kind of paint brand. You could choose to just stain these if you would like to leave them natural. And you're going to see where we're going with this. And then you can make your own decisions. But I'm going to make up a couple of these. So I'll use a different color, paint color, all in the DIY line, which is a, it's a clay paint. I was going through, it's not a fusion mineral paint, it's not a chalk paint, it's a clay-based paint. So it is not sealed as yet. I'm gonna be doing a little bit more with it. I just wanna get it base painted, and quite honestly, I really think I'm not gonna need any more than just one coat because I would like them to have a little bit of a rustic look. I'm just going over some spaces where the spool's a little rough. Okay, so just paint your spools and put those off to the side because we're gonna move on to another section of it. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna make the roof. Okay, so we're making little houses, we're gonna make the roof, and we're actually going to felt the roof and then perhaps do a little embroidery. So what I am gonna do is pull you overhead so that as I'm showing you and demonstrating the technique that I'm using for the felting, you can see what the heck I'm doing. All right, for my felting, what I do have is a sponge pad that I'm going to felt down into rather than the needles going down into hard surface and snapping. So this way they could embed themselves in, nothing's going to happen. I just happen to have a little felting cloth that helps me be able to pull up fibers that would go through. You do need to have needles designed for needle felting. These are triangular needles, which you can't really see, but what makes them special is that they have tiny little barbs on them. And when you run your fingers like this, you can feel those ridges. And that's what then, when it goes down through your wool, starts to mesh all those fibers together, felt them together. So what we're going to look at doing, and I'm doing, this one's going to be a blue roof. I'm just starting with some of my wool. Now this is carded wool called roving wool. It is, as you can see, not spun yet. It's not spun into yarn, and that's what we want to use. Now for this, I'm just going to roll it. I want to make kind of a cone. I was thinking what would be the best way to describe it, but in essence, that's what I'm making. I'm going to make a cone. So if this is my base, it's going to be flat. This end's going to be a little bit pointed. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start felting it together. This is going to start to merge all those fibers together. Now, a couple of things. When you poke it in, you want to take it straight out. These needles are delicate. They can snap off very easily. So you want to go straight in and straight out. the way that you did. These needles are also extremely sharp, so they will go into your yarn, your wool, extremely readily. They will go into your finger just as readily. So caution, this is not something that I recommend for young children to do with you at all. It is just a little bit more pokey. So right now, I'm just roughly felting this to kind of try and get some of the fibers staying together, starting to create my rough general shape. You can see me turning and rotating it. It's because as I felt it down, those fibers start going through to the base. So we don't want to be felting it to our cloth. And so I'm rotating it, pulling those fibers out because I am punching through all of that, if that makes sense. So I'm just going to keep going with this and, you know, poking in this way, being cautious of my fingers to start to flatten out my base. I'll be going down around the edging, starting to tighten it up. And what we want is to create a nice, tight mass. So we want this not to be as loose and as springy as this. As we felt it more and more, it will get denser and firmer to the touch. And that's what we're looking for, something that has a bit more of a smooth surface, that we've condensed this down. So you can see that I started with it fairly puffy. Ultimately, this is, let me grab a spool. Ultimately, this is going to sit on top. So, you know, right now, that's pretty large. I don't need it to go in much. That's kind of nice width there, but I definitely need it shorter and tighter, and ultimately, this will go that way. If I need to add a bit more, maybe I need a little bit more width, or I want to create a lip, or I want to add some contrasting, well, I can do that. I can wind that on and felt that in. So not an issue with that. But we're just going to continue to go until we felt it down into a much denser, you can see the difference, so a much denser product here. And so I'm going to continue on with this one on my own, but now we're going to move on and do the next step. So as we would go and attach this onto one of our bases, we want to just kind of embellish it a little bit. For the next step, I'm just going to take some embroidery floss and I am going to just sew. All right, I don't like sewing, so bear with me, but I'm just going to sew some little embellishments on. Now, you could take little buttons or little sequins or, you know, anything that you have that way to add onto it. You could use just your roving wool, and you could just felt on a design and pattern. But because this was kind of a, not technically a felting craft per se, I decided to keep the felting, oh my goodness, this is just going to be a pain. I decided to keep the felting just nice and simple, just one easy little process. So if you were new to it, then this would be a cool, just beginner's little craft. So for this, all that I'm going to do is I'm going to start by just anchoring my thread. And now you can add whatever you'd like. You can add some flowers, you could add polka dots, you could just add some lines going up, whatever you want to do to kind of embellish your roof, just to make it a little bit more unique, stand out just a little bit more. I'm just doing a quick little, I don't even know what this stitch is called. I'm calling it a back stitch, because I'm just moving backward, but it's creating a bit of a thicker line, which is what I wanted. And I'm just looking at doing that, curving that around. And then we can go back and add embellishments onto it. Now that our paint is dry, we get to add in our little doors and windows, and you really have the opportunity to be able to make this any shape. I'm just using some little markers to be able to do this. You could use pens, you could use a really fine paintbrush. I'm not good with fine paintbrushes, so I'm going with kind of what works for me. I don't know what other color I have that would make sense. Well, yellow on yellow isn't going to work, but maybe it's a different shade. Okay, that's kind of good. Oh, and I can pull up some of that brown. I like the bleed through. And for this, you're doing any design, any pattern that you want. And, you know, looking at big windows, small windows. You know what? Maybe I'll do a, just for fun. Oh, I need a really fat one. There's a 10. Okay. Whoops. So you can do windows in whatever shape that you'd like, whatever pattern you'd like, however many you'd like. And we're just drawing in and giving some shape and dimension to this. So get your doors and your windows painted on, and then we're ready for the next step. Once you've got your little design painted on, drawn on, and you could do them, you could do a back door. I mean, you do you. We want to add a couple of little embellishments. Now I have a little bit of moss here that's very stiff and just nicely green. And what I want to do is glue that down around that bottom edge. So I'm just going to take some hot glue, add that in. Oh man, this glue gun. And I'm just going to start to add that around the edge and glue some little pieces of that moss down. Now you could use whatever you have. You don't have moss, you could just, you could draw some bushes on, right? That would be okay. As I'm getting glue all over the new desktop, it was just a matter of time. Okay. There we go. Just gonna push it all down. And then you can take scissors and trim that off, right? So don't worry about if it's too big or too bulky or messy. You can do a little hedge trimming afterward. Now, the other thing that I'm doing before I'm gonna add my roof is I happen to have a tub of French lavender. And so I'm just going to do a border around the top. I mean, it's just happenstance that it's also going to smell really nice. But it's just going to give a little trimming under the roof. You could skip this entirely. You could add beads. You could do whatever. Now, I just want to let that dry a little bit, pat this into place a little bit more. And then, okay, this is the lid for this one. Let me just see how I want it to go. Maybe that one, okay. And then I'm gonna add a whack of glue on top. And then I'm gonna take my needle felted roof, stick it on, and hold it in place. All right, let's take a look at our little finished houses. I have to tell you, I did 3 because I was just caught up in the moment. So we have this one. This is the little blue roof that you saw me start to needle felt with you. This is the little white spool. And we put a little bit of moss up on the top as well, just because it was the least involved roof, but just so cute. We've got this one that you saw me glue the roof onto. And it's a little taller than the others. And then I have this little guy as well. They're just adorable. They're just so cute. And again, with these, you could, especially this one that's a little bit bigger of a roof, or certainly if you have a bigger spool, make them in a size consistent with that. But this one definitely, and some of the others, you could use them as little mini pin cushions. So they could be a functional item, not just simply a little decorative one, but they are super cute as a little decorative item, building a unique little fairy village, or just having one sitting up on a bookshelf here or there as a point of interest. So pin cushion, decor, up to you. If you are not looking at starting needle felting, then you can take the same idea. You could just take a piece of paper or cardboard and cut it into a cone shape, so that you're just kind of cutting that partial semicircle and turning it, gluing it in place, making the little cone on top, decorating it up with whatever you happen to have to create a thatched roof or shingles or something. Certainly if you're into sewing, you could sew up a little top as well. Or, you know what, just cut the fabric and glue the fabric into a circle and stuff it. So you have something that, again, still would work as a pin cushion if it's a stuffed fabric roof. Or, you know what, give just that little basic needle felting a try. You can felt on the flowers if you want to, or I just embroidered them on. I kind of suck at embroidery, but it was good enough for this little project. Let me know what you think. Always love hearing from you, and I look forward to seeing you on the next one. Until then, take care.